Located on 225 acres in Garden City, Long Island, Nassau Community College, a member of the State University of New York system, has close to 20,000 students attend the school each year. The college mascot is Leo the Lion, and these are his stories of the school's absolute best and brightest who have graduated over the past 50 plus years. So let's catch up together as the Alumni Association of Nassau Community College proudly presents Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Welcome to Lion Tales. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and I am a director on the board of the Alumni Association at Nassau Community College and a proud graduate. I am here to celebrate the successes of our alum, and together we will share stories that will uplift, inspire, and often amuse you. Each week, I will introduce you to the alumni of Nassau Community College interested in sharing their experiences while attending the college and the secrets to their success. Look for many new and exciting events on the Alumni Association social media pages and share any exciting news with us on Facebook, Instagram, or on our webpage at ncc.edu/alumni. And don't forget to join the Alumni Association. You can find me on Twitter, now known as X, and Instagram at Dr. Lynnda Nadien. Did you know Leo the Lion is the mascot for Nassau Community College? Lions are ruled by Leo and fire. The male lions represent pride while the female stands for teamwork. Together, we are Lion Tales. Today, I would like to welcome to Lion Tales Gillian Atkinson, class of 2000. Gillian credits her journey in academia to her humble beginnings at Nassau Community College. She is the Director of Intercultural Engagement and Inclusion and Associate Director in the Office of Student Leadership and Engagement at Hofstra University and earned an MBA, a CDE, which is a Certified Diversified Executive, and an SHRM/CPCPC, which is certified for working within the human resource framework within the university, and she is a certified professional. Gillian is a proud alum, and her hobbies include walking in nature, reading. She likes taking nature walks, and she is interested in watching Korean dramas, which we will probably be talking about, so we can learn more about that. Welcome to Lion Tales, Gillian Atkinson, class of 2000.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Nadien. This is so exciting. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah. So tell us about your experiences in the beginning at Nassau Community College.
I think Nassau really gave me insight into myself. Coming there as an 18-year-old straight out of high school, I was coming from a predominantly white neighborhood and really hadn't had much engagement with people who identified similar to myself. My parents are Jamaican. I was actually born in England, and then we immigrated to the United States when I was around 7. It was growing up where I grew up was great, but really not having that level of connection and belongingness. Mm-hmm. I'm not really knowing my own history. I mean, you knew the parts of the history that my parents would share, but right. To really be able to engage and sit down in a class full of people who were equally excited to learn the history of, our ancestors was something that I never really thought was possible until I came to Nassau Community College. And being in a room with people who looked like me and, understood my culture and the ethnicity around it and the language, it just gave me such a great sense of belonging that I never really experienced before I got to Nassau.
So initially, the school experience, what was your decision to attend Nassau? You were graduating high school, and did you have some idea that you may attend?
Yep, I had a pretty good idea that I was going to attend. My sister, Frances, had just finished Nassau and had graduated and was going on to SUNY Albany. And at the time, my mother was really ill with end-stage cancer, and my dad was trying to take care of her. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and it didn't make sense for me to go off to college. And I think I just decided to take the same route as my sister, who went to Nassau, got her associate's degree, and then went on to SUNY Albany. So it just made sense at the time to just enroll in Nassau. And what's really funny and ironic is, in high school, you hear all these things about NASA, 13th grade, and all these derogatory things about NASA. But when you get there, it is just a completely different experience than what, people, the stereotype of what you're thinking you're going to enter. I mean, I, for the first time, really could see myself through the lens of so many other people. And I think it really kind of helped me in my journey to the work that I do today, right? Whether it's advocating for LGBTQ plus identities or really trying to figure out a way to bring my student organizations together. None of that would have been possible if I hadn't had the experience that I had at NASA. It really did start there. And it's something that I'm always grateful for, because you went in with one mindset and I came out completely changed person.
Right. And so many of our guests on Lion Tales speak about the fact that they were a little apprehensive and then they felt that they were moving toward this whole notion of the 13th grade. However, coming through here, it really touched their heart and soul. And so that's such an exciting thing to hear that you had said the same, because that's really such a way for people to become, to really find themselves. What were some of your favorite courses that you had while you were at the college at the beginning?
I think one of my favorite courses was the Afro-Caribbean World. That was one of the courses that I took. Maybe it wasn't my first semester. I think it was maybe my second or third semester there. And being able to actually sit in a classroom and better understand, the origins of the Caribbean and who the original people were, and, understand the language and how the transatlantic slave trade really impacted the Caribbean, and how so much of our language and our culture is similar to the African cultures. And just being able to kind of have a better understanding of that and who I was through that lens, it gave me a real sense of pride in myself that I really hadn't had before. It gave me a different level of awareness and self-confidence, because, you hear it from your parents, like I've said, but to actually see it written in a textbook and to better really understand that you did come from someplace and it was someplace important. And, it's not just this, this lesson handed down, but an actual class with a curriculum and reading. And I just love that class. Some of the authors that we got to read, and it was just wonderful. Another one of my favorite classes with Professor Keith Keating. He was phenomenal. He was an English professor, and he was so passionate about not just the literature, but the words, right? Like, he broke down the word to say, do you even know where this word came from? Go look back. It came from this, and this is why we use this word today. And just the level of passion that he brought to the class was, you couldn't help but to be like enthusiastic and excited to go to the class, just to have a professor that was that excited to teach it. So, so many of my professors there were experts in their field. Another one of my favorites was Professor Grimes from the Criminal Justice Department. Like, what I learned from Professor Grimes was that regardless of however you might be engaging within the criminal justice fields, bringing empathy into each and every one of those corridors is essential. And to be sitting in a classroom full of individuals who are aspiring to become police officers, for Professor Grimes to teach, like, I get it, it's a challenging job because you have to balance this, street awareness and street knowledge, but you cannot lose your empathy while doing that. You have to always try to engage with that empathy to pull people in opposed to pushing people away.
Right.
So, I just learned so much about life through these courses and through these experts in their fields, and I'm forever grateful to NASA for that.
Yeah, and I think, it's so interesting, too, because certain professors, and even with vocabulary, there are things that we hear throughout our life and we never really understand what it means, but they point something out to you and you're like, wow, I never even understood it to be that way.
Yeah.
Or looking at, the map of the world and all of the different trade routes and the manner in which people get goods from one island to another. And we don't really realize what's happening, but it's like such an incredible thing to know. And to be able to say, wow, this is something that I learned just in a history class or in my philosophy class. So I love to hear when the professors really do inspire your work. Now, your current work, can you describe your current work that you're doing right now?
So I'm currently the Director of Intercultural Engagement and Inclusion at Hofstra University. And what that is it's basically the diversity, equity, inclusion component, but student-facing, right? So anything having to do with students with regards to engaging with diversity, equity, inclusion, that is the role of my office. And that is anything from training students, all incoming students get trained with regards to inclusive practices at Hofstra. It's also, I manage and advise the identity-based organization. So that's everything from the African Student Association all the way down to the Queer Trans People of Color Coalition, the South Asian Student Association. So it's just a whole mixture of different components between trainings and advising and, just managing, whether I'm also going out into different departments to have conversations about how best to engage with students, depending upon, whether it's they're LGBTQ plus identifying and trying to teach faculty and as well as administration the importance of using pronouns. It just runs the gamut of everything regarding DEI and social justice.
You are listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and our guest today is Gillian Atkinson, class of 2000. Going back to the training for engaging and equity and inclusion, what are some of your thoughts about the concerns that we're seeing for equity and inclusion, and what type of training would the students need? Do they come in with an awareness of culture and or gender, or are they pretty stringent in their thoughts?
I mean, I think like with any other population, you're going to run the gamut of having, anywhere from the left to the right. But I think what I am seeing and what does kind of pose a bit of a sense of worry within me is that I just feel that our nation as a whole is moving further to the left or to the right, right? Yeah. Like whenever having these conversations, we're no longer able to find places to meet in the middle and to really have an authentic conversation. And that is concerning. So, where I try to pose it and frame it to my students, listen, we don't all have to agree with what we're saying here. We definitely don't have to do that. But what we do need to do is have a sense of respect and listen and hear what each other is saying. Right? Because if you can at least just hear, and again, using that word empathize, with that other person's perspective, you might be able to learn something from them and then share something with them. Right? But if we're both coming from this end of like, no, my way is the way and it's my way or the highway is a very dangerous place.
Right.
Right? The highway could be sending people to, white supremacist groups, or it might be sending people to further, leftist groups. There's no sense of trying to come to the middle. So what I think my office tries to do is really try to balance and find a space where we can pull people in opposed to pushing people out. I think it's so important to meet people where they are and to pull them in without a sense of judgment or without trying to shame, but to really have a conversation about how we're able to move better further together than apart. Because once they get into what I call the real world, right, once they graduate, especially if they're staying in New York, if they don't have that sense of understanding of how to engage with a diverse array of people and how to consistently pull people in, whether you're a manager or you're a director or, even if you're an athlete, if you don't have an understanding of how to engage effectively with people of all different ethnicities, races, identities, then you're not going to succeed as much as you would hope to when you get out there. So I think really trying to lay the groundwork of the importance of creating inclusive spaces and having authentic, real conversations that are pulling people together is really the mission of my office and what we try to do at Hofstra.
Yeah. And in terms of student leadership, why is that so important that students do take on these leadership roles? Yeah,
it's important because I think what I've seen within student leaders that take on these roles is they're better equipped when they get into the real world. Like, it would be great if we lived in these one-dimensional frames that you just only had this one issue that you had to deal with and you could just singularly focus on that. But that is not the real world. We're working in a world that's very fast-paced, and it's very, you've got multiple issues all the time, and you've got to figure out how to prioritize, how to get things done, how to knock it out, and how to move on to the next thing. And I really think student leadership really helps students have a better understanding of how to do that. Yes, you now need to you have to go to class, you have to pass your classes, you now need to be engaged with this club and organization, whatever that might mean within putting on programs, getting contracts in, engaging with your guests, engaging with your members, having them come to vote, having them engage. I think that, and then as well as maybe you work a part-time job, maybe you have responsibilities at home, maybe you have a brother or sister that you have to take care of. So all of these things, I think, especially help students when they get into the real world, really kind of help them in a multifaceted, way to be more effective, opposed to just, it's great that you can come in. It's also great to put on a resume. I work very closely with our friends at the Career Center, and they're always encouraging students. I'm not saying that students have to sign up for 5 or 6 clubs. Please don't do that. But 1 or 2 clubs, because essentially your academics is the primary focus here. But 1 or 2 clubs always look so good to have on a resume to show that there's a level of engagement, right? Like you've learned some of the skills that you're going to, the transferable skills that you're going to need in every workplace where there's other people, to how to engage with others. And that you're able to kind of not just do an academic-based curriculum, but you've done something that's extracurriculum and you've gone outside of your comfort zone to do that. I think that's so important that we're trying to push out a holistic student who's able to do many things all at once, because that's the world that we live in currently.
Yeah, and we speak about intercultural engagement. How would you describe that or define that?
I think intercultural is different than multicultural. Multicultural almost feels like you're taking a plethora of different cultures and you're lining them up together. Mm-hmm. Intercultural is kind of like where you're bringing all these different cultures and identities together, and you're finding ways to kind of mix them into one another and have them understand their importance of not just their identity, but the identity as a whole. The intersectionalities of identity, I think, is a better way to kind of see the intercultural engagement.
Do you think social media is helpful in spreading positive messages to support equity and inclusion, or can it be a hindrance in some way?
I think it's both and, I think you have the pluses where, yes, you are able to send messages out that are positive, that people are responsive to, that they're able to see the good things that are occurring within the DEI world. But at the same time, you also have the opposite faction, right, where you're not always seeing those positive things and you're seeing things that are of concern, and, you're hearing yet another story about something that occurred and, that was either racially based or, identity based, or sometimes it can be really overwhelming. So I think that you have to have this delicate balance of what you allow in and what you try to keep out. And it's good to have an awareness about what's going on in the world, but I don't think that you have to overload yourself with all the negativity. You have to filter in some positivity there. And I think that's really important in the work that we do. Yes, are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. But do I feel like we're aspiring and we're getting there? Absolutely. I have to say my greatest hope is in Generation Z. Their level of awareness when they come to the table is just out of this world. Just the level of engaging and how they speak and how they, it's not a big deal. And it really isn't a big deal if somebody identifies within this or somebody's bringing this. They really understand, for the most part, the importance of having a diverse array of friends and having a diverse array of mindsets at this table. And I feel like Gen Z, they're one of the strongest advocates for change. And I'm really hopeful to see those changes coming within the next generation or two, in this, few years, because I really do hope the passion that they have today carries them forth to the future, because if they do that, I think the changes that we'll see will be phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think the respect for the human race coming back, just in general as a whole, if we can gain an element of respect and even consideration for people. I mean, I think that there's so many times where, we're not really focusing on that in our daily lives, or like our daily work. And we do have an influence because, again, you're working with a group of students in a certain age group, and the 4 years that they're with you, and then they're going to move to the next level. And, what are your hopes for them as they move forward?
Yeah, I think the greatest things that I can hope is they take the time when they're with me in these 4 years to get to know individuals as people and not as labels.
Yes.
That is something that I really try to stress over and over again, regardless of whatever space I'm in, whether it's a workshop, training, or I'm just, in a group, an organizational meeting. It's really trying to not look at someone and automatically start sticking labels and stereotypes on them. It's really taking that minute or 5 minutes to do a deeper dive to say, hey, my name is Gillian. I'm from here. Who are you? And, what's your major? What year are you? And really it never gets easier than college to meet people that you will never meet before and that you will probably never meet again. College is the easiest place to do this, right? To really step outside of your comfort zone and to engage with people who identify differently. So that's why I try to encourage all my students. This is it. Like, these next 4 years are going to be your time to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because whether you're uncomfortable here or whether you're uncomfortable in the workplace, there's always your net growth comes from discomfort. So get used to that discomfort, lean into it, and then feed from it. Engage with people that you've never engaged with. Ask questions, go to meetings. This is the time to do all of these wonderful things. And if you don't do it now, it's a missed opportunity that I don't know when that time will come again.
You are listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and our guest today is Gillian Atkinson, class of 2000. So going back to inspiration, how do you inspire yourself and others throughout the day?
It comes in small steps, right? It's never that I have a big picture, but it never always is like, yes, I'm going to go out there and do great big things today. It's like, no, I'm going to go out there and make small, good changes, right? Like, plant those seeds. That's where the work really comes. I think there's nothing better. It's great to feel as if you're included, but there is no better feeling than belonging. Like, nothing beats belonging.
Right.
And that's where I get my passion from, is to ensure that everyone around me has that sense of belonging, because belonging is something that comes from within. Inclusion is something that you can give to somebody, but having that sense of belonging comes from somewhere within you, and it feels like home. It feels comfortable. It's like, yes, I have found my people, and I want to be able to provide that space to every student that comes to Hofstra. So I think that's where I get my motivation, and that's where I get my drive and my creativity to say, okay, what can I do today to develop a greater sense of belonging among our students? Like, what thing can I do that I haven't done before? And I think that's where I get my motivation from and my inspiration from, is just being consistently creative in different ways to bring people together and to form inclusive communities.
Yeah, and you've received multiple degrees post-Nassau Community College, so tell us about some of those experiences, that moving forward from a community college setting into the next level of the higher education, how has that sort of impacted the work that you're doing now?
So from NASA, I went and I did a Bachelor's of Business Administration degree at Nyack College. And then from there, I did a Master's of Business Administration at Dowling College. And what I kind of found is that I loved learning.
Yeah.
It started at NASA, if I'm honest. It
Yes.
didn't start at high school. I didn't like those spaces.
Right.
It was really when I came to NASA that when I was able to engage with classes that I was interested in, that I was like, oh man, this is really cool. I love having a wide breadth of knowledge on different components. So from there, I have my master's and my bachelor's, but, even that sometimes is enough, so I decided to go back for different professional certifications. I received my Society of Human Resource Management certified professional, and I think it was important because doing this work, you want to have a holistic view, right? Because they might be students now, but eventually they're going to be employees. And how am I preparing my students to when they get out to the real world as employees? So I decided, I want to start working with human resources and having a different framework about, different understandings. And then from there, I went on to do a certified diversity executive. That's somebody who's been in the field doing this work, doing DEI work for 10 years. So when I got that certification, so I think it's just being in higher education, you're always learning, and you're always trying to challenge yourself to be able to engage differently.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do.
Now that the state is, sort of, not sort of, but they are actually requiring school districts to look at their DEI and how they approach that. What are some of the goals for your department, just engaging students again in the academia part, but also in the social justice part? And then how do you prove to the state that the college is in compliance with some of those DEI goals?
Right. So every year we're required to fill out a document from New York State to show like different ways. And fortunately for me, it's just not me doing this work. It is, I have a Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer and the Office of Equity and Inclusion. So, but for my part, it's every single incoming student at Hofstra gets trained in DEI and creating inclusive communities and the importance of inclusive communities on our campus.
Yes.
As well as we offer trainings, a 4-hour training called Inclusive Community that is really talking about queer identities within the LGBTQ plus community. And then it's really getting out there to talk about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, whether that's with faculty or administration, having those sometimes uncomfortable conversations around race or ethnicity or faith. It's really kind of sitting down with people so that they have a better understanding of themselves and each other and how that impacts the work that we do with each other and with our students.
Yes.
So I think, we have to register that. Every year I have to report what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. So then this way New York State is assured that the message is getting across, as well as maintaining our discrimination policy. That's something that is consistently being looked upon and updated. It's, all of these things are so important, and I'm just grateful to live in a state where they value the work that we do.
Yeah, very important. And, I think, too, when it comes to discrimination, we always forget about the fact that women in general have been discriminated probably more so generally across the board. I was visiting Washington and I was reading some of the suffragette information. It was just so interesting to see that, the rights that we have really we haven't had them for very long. So what are your goals moving forward and into the next phase of work and life in general?
I think it's really like what I've found to be the most successful is really teaching students how to advocate and how to teach themselves. So we've created the Peer Educator Program, which kind of brings students in who are interested in this work in social justice and DEI, and they become a part of staff and they get paid. But we get them trained, right? Yeah. And they're the ones that are developing the trainings, and they're the ones that are developing the programs. And what's happened is having this peer-to-peer engagement, the number of students coming to our events has gone up because I'm a proud Gen Xer, but they're not coming to events that I'm putting on because they're like, okay, boomer, whatever. But at least this way, it's a peer-to-peer. They're looking at different people from TikTok and they're saying, okay, Jill, this is a good person. I think we should bring them to campus, or this is a really cool program, or this is a good idea. And they're the ones that's doing it. They're the ones that are really running our social media pages also to say, like, I just did this whole infograph about this particular identity or being ace or, being non-binary, and I'd like to post it. Okay, let me take a look at it. Looks good, make these edits, and they're the ones that are doing it. So I think sometimes putting the reins into the hands of the students who are trying to do this work works even better than me trying to just do it by myself. Absolutely. It's pulling in people and making it a community effort.
I would like to thank our guest, Gillian Atkinson, class of 2000s. How can our listeners contact you?
Gillian, Gillian .Atkinson, Atkinson @ Hofstra.edu.
I would like to thank you for being our guest today. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and I serve as a director on the board of the Nassau Community College Alumni Association, and I am a proud alum. Lion Tales is available as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. More information online at nassaucommunitycollegeradio.org. Thanks for listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.